The atmosphere in the chamber was electric as Judge John Roberts took his seat, eyeing Representative Jasmine Crockett with a mixture of skepticism and cold formality. She stood confidently, arms crossed, not flinching under his gaze. Hearing commenced, Roberts, known for his commanding presence, launched into a sharply worded introduction, subtly questioning her legal acumen. It was clear from his tone that he expected her to buckle. Jasmine remained composed, her expression unwavering. Cameras were rolling and millions watched, sensing tension simmering. This wasn't going to be a routine exchange. Something far more riveting was unfolding. Roberts cleared his throat and asked his first question, laced with a condescending undertone, about a complex constitutional clause. His intent was obvious: corner her, expose a flaw, then dismiss her with polite authority. But Jasmine didn't miss a beat. With sharp precision, she dissected the question, reciting the clause, its case history, and the Supreme Court's interpretation all from memory. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Roberts blinked, recalibrating. She had answered the question not just correctly, but more comprehensively than he had anticipated. The game had changed, and Jasmine had just seized control of the board. Undeterred, Roberts pressed further, this time questioning her legal stance on judicial overreach. It was a loaded query designed to trip her up and spark controversy. Jasmine leaned forward, her voice steady, delivering a powerful response, citing landmark decisions and precedent. Articulation was crisp, her reasoning flawless.
Algris
Tried to interject, but she calmly held her ground, continuing her explanation with poise. Every point she made was backed by solid case law, and her command of constitutional law began turning heads.
House.
The gallery was captivated. This wasn't just a defense. It was a masterclass in legal rhetoric. Roberts adjusted his tone, clearly surprised. Gone was the smirk, replaced by cautious curiosity. He shifted tactics, now probing her ethics and legislative history. Jasmine, unfazed, spoke about her track record, with clarity and conviction. She laid out her policies, her legislative intent, and the ethical framework guiding her public service. Her words weren't emotional appeals, they were anchored in principle and law. Even critics in the room began to nod in grudging respect. The judge found himself leaning in, not to interrupt, but to listen. She was no longer the one under scrutiny. The power dynamic had shifted. Sensing the momentum slipping, Roberts pulled out what he clearly thought was a final blow, a hypothetical scenario involving a legal contradiction. He delivered it with dramatic flair, expecting her to stumble. But Jasmine didn't blink. She paused, analyzed, and then delivered a rebuttal so meticulously reasoned that it turned the hypothetical on its head. Not only did she unravel the scenario, but she also pointed out a flaw in the judge's assumption, citing a case Roberts himself had ruled on. A murmur ran through the room. The judge's brow furrowed. He had just been checked by someone he had underestimated. As the questioning continued, Jasmine's brilliance only became more apparent. With each question thrown her way, she answered not defensively, strategically laying a foundation, building an argument, and turning every point into a demonstration of her legal intellect. At no point did she resort to bravado. Her weapon was knowledge wielded with calm authority. The contrast between the two was stark: Roberts with his institutional power, and Jasmine with her intellectual mastery. Slowly, the spectators began to realize that this was no mismatch. If anything, it was a reminder of how dangerous it is to underestimate a prepared woman by now. Roberts had dropped the condescension. His questions had become more thoughtful, and his tone less adversarial. It wasn't a debate anymore, it was an education. The judge even nodded at some of her points, a subtle acknowledgement that she had earned his attention. Jasmine, ever composed, didn't gloat. She kept her focus, responding with the same precision and confidence she had displayed. Since the beginning, the moment had transcended politics. It was about respect, intellect, and truth. And in that chamber, Jasmine Crockett had become a symbol of unshakable poise under pressure. Meanwhile, social media was ablaze. Clips of her responses were going viral. Legal scholars were tweeting in admiration, commentators calling it one of the most riveting live testimonies in recent memory. The hashtags Crockett vs. Roberts and Legal Queen began trending globally. People weren't just impressed, they were inspired. Many young women, especially women of color, were watching this unfold and realizing what was possible when intellect met courage. Jasmine wasn't just representing her district that day, she was representing an idea that brilliance doesn't come with robes, it comes with resolve. After a particularly intricate legal exchange, Roberts sat back and finally broke into a rare smile. "You're remarkably well-versed," he said, not as a challenge, but as a compliment. Jasmine nodded respectfully. "I came prepared, Your Honor." The room broke into light applause, quickly hushed by a gavel. The acknowledgement may have seemed small, but in that environment, it meant everything. Roberts wasn't known for handing out praise. That smile marked a turning point, not just in their exchange, but in the perception of Jasmine Crockett in the highest legal circles. The final question was philosophical, almost reflective. Roberts asked what justice meant to her personally. Jasmine paused, then responded not with citations, but with a story. She spoke of growing up in a community often overlooked, and how law became her tool for accountability, equity, and change. Her voice carried conviction, not just as a lawyer or a representative, but as a person who had lived the gaps in the system. Her answer was raw and powerful. The chamber was silent again, not out of surprise, but reverence. Even Roberts seemed moved. The moment was human, real, and unforgettable. As the hearing drew to a close, the panel of legal experts that had remained, reserved throughout, now whispered among themselves, visibly impressed. Jasmine. Crockett had walked into that room as a politician facing a skeptical Chief Justice. She walked out of it a national man embodiment of intellect meeting grit. Commentators on post-hearing broadcasts praised her as one of the most legally articulate public servants they'd seen in years. This wasn't just a viral moment. It was a career-defining demonstration of poise and precision. Jasmine's performance was, in every way, historic. In the hallway afterward, reporters swarmed her for statements. She smiled graciously and answered, calmly, avoiding grandstanding. When asked if she felt intimidated by Roberts, she replied, "I respect the institution. But intimidation? No, I'm here to do my job." That simple response said everything. She wasn't shaken. She wasn't even flustered. Her confidence wasn't about ego, it was about mastery. Legal pundits spent the next few days breaking down her answers, each time finding another layer of brilliance in her approach. She had made law not just understandable, but compelling to watch. Back at the Supreme Court, Roberts was reportedly heard telling a clerk that Jasmine had out-targed half the people who stand before this bench. Though informal, that statement echoed across the legal world. She had shifted the narrative. No longer could anyone question her capability without exposing their own bias. Crockett wasn't just good, she was great, and now the world knew it. Judges, law students, journalists, and citizens alike had witnessed something rare, a live dismantling of expectation through unapologetic brilliance. In the days that followed, Jasmine's social media accounts flooded with messages from aspiring lawyers, professors, young girls in debate clubs, and even retired judges. Her exchange with Roberts had struck a chord deeper than expected. She had become an icon not just for what she said, but for how she said it. Calm, calculated, and fearless. It reminded everyone that true power doesn't need theatrics, it needs preparation, heart, and an unshakable sense of purpose. Crockett embodied that truth with every word she spoke that day. Weeks later, as the footage of the exchange continued to circulate, a prominent law journal featured her on the cover with the headline, "The Genius We Almost Overlooked." It was a reflection on how close society often comes to missing brilliance because of prejudice or outdated perceptions. But Jasmine had broken through, not by demanding space, but by owning it with substance. Judge Roberts may have begun the day hoping to challenge her, but by the end, he and the world had witnessed something extraordinary. Jasmine Crockett had turned intimidation into inspiration, and history had taken note.